Hey Roadies, this is Adriana from Roadie Free Radio. In this episode, Larry speaks to Director of Technical Operations at IMS Technology Services, Chris Leonard. Chris has professionally been in the audio world for 2 decades. His start, monitor engineering with Maryland Sound International, where he toured with artists like Don Henley, Disturbed, and Anthony Hamilton. Since then, Chris has switched to IMS, where he oversees all aspects of audio at gigs like Philadelphia's Eagles Super Bowl victory parade and Presidential Inaugurations. In this short clip, Chris talks about his roots in the sound industry. It's all thanks to the long weekends as a kid hanging out with the gear in the back of his dad's station wagon. Watching his dad all these years, Chris has one big takeaway: being able to read people. Want to know more about Chris? Make sure to check out the full episode, number 177, from April 11th, 2022. Thank you for listening, and thank you for subbing. Here are Larry and Chris.
You have been working with your dad. You post pictures of yourself with your dad, as a young kid, working all the way. Tell me about your dad. Who is your dad?
Yes, my dad, most people know him as Chip. Technically Charles, but most people know him as Chip. He, in college, was just hanging out with some buddies, and they were in a rock cover band called Granite, because that meant hard rock. Doing Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath covers and things like that. Playing the cover band circuit. They're like, "Hey, Chip, you want to push some faders and load this gear in and out?" And he didn't know what he was doing, and so he kind of learned and did that, and had a bread van full of gear and was just doing shows. And so and then I came along, and he was doing sound in like the local church, and some of the people from that church, we had like a blues band. We'd go out and play like coffee houses and bike rallies and things like that. And so literally as a kid, since I could walk pretty much, I was putting gear in the back of a station wagon with my dad doing gigs every weekend. There almost wasn't a weekend as a kid growing up that I wasn't doing shows.
That's amazing.
And so it's absolutely, you talked about like you're dreaming of like touring. The vivid memory that I have as a kid is my dad. Almost after every show, we would play Jackson Browne's "Stay" in the extended version with the roadies, right? And
Yep.
the loadout portion of the song
Yep.
"Stay," right?
Yeah.
And it dawned on me not too long ago that was my vision of what touring was as a kid. Right, like I learned about the touring scene, not from Facebook and magazines or whatever.
Sure.
Like Jackson Browne taught me what touring was.
Right.
And so we would like, oh, it'd be cool one day to be on a tour bus or doing trucks and this, that, and the other. And didn't think much of it. And then high school happened, didn't go so very well for me, and dropped out of high school. I was like, okay, well, what am I gonna do? And it's like, well, I kind of like this sound thing. Let's go for that. And not knowing really how to get in, I was like, all right, well, I guess I have to go to school for it, which isn't necessarily a bad choice. It's not the only choice, but it's a choice.
Yeah.
So I went to like a recording school in Maryland called Sheffield Institute for the Recording Arts, and it was like a 6-month, 3 nights a week or whatever program. And I got picked up with Maryland Sound after that, so which was a great place to be picked up. So that was my dad and that history there in time with him. So he was always on the side. For him, it was never, he never really toured. It was never really necessarily pro, if you will. I mean, he got paid, so technically you're a pro at that point, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But yeah.
Wow, man. Is your dad still around?
He is. Yep.
Cool. Does he still do this or no?
Not really. I mean, there was a local church he was working for a little bit, but for the most part, he kind of helps my sister take care of her kids.
Cool, man. And so you grew up in the Maryland area? Is that where you're from?
Yep, Maryland. So technically, if anyone actually knows, Westminster is
Okay.
about 45 minutes to an hour west of Baltimore.
Gotcha. So this has been in your DNA since the start.
Yes. 100%.
That's wild. That's very cool. What are some things aside from the Jackson Browne tune, which I know very well? I played that a lot during the making of my short film ROADIE.
Mm-hmm.
And on the last night after the last shot of that shoot, I got in the car from downtown LA and was driving home. turn on the radio and it was the first song on. It was sun was
Nice.
coming up. It was super weird, but so I know that tune well. And aside from that song and those things, what were some of the job traits that he taught you? And I don't mean like here's how to wrap a cable. I mean more like what'd you learn from watching him deal with people and being quote unquote on the job, even though it wasn't his profession?
Sure.
You know, being around those guys and whatnot and music, what'd you pick up?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I probably hadn't really thought about it until you just said it, but I mean, you know, anyone who's ever worked in the church world, I mean, 90% of the musicians aren't professionals or don't do it on a daily basis. You constantly have different ones. So managing those personalities from a monitor's perspective, and maybe having to coach them along of trying to tell them what they, you know, what they actually need as opposed to what they're asking for. You know, a lot of my touring work was in monitors, and so typically at church you're kind of mixing that from front of house, but you're still having to deal with those personalities just the same as you would if you were only a monitor engineer.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, I probably hadn't really thought about it until now, but I think there's an osmosis of me seeing his conversations and language with them on stage probably helped set me up in some ways inadvertently that I wasn't aware of down the road.
Yeah, because I imagine a lot of those skills are coming into play as you deal with clients, corporate clients and whatnot, and what you do now,
Yes.
right? I mean, they've got
Absolutely.
needs. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of red tape. There's, you know, you know, we talked whatever it was a few months ago on the phone, and we made the connection that I have shot a lot of stuff in Boston and e-tail for this company, Worldwide Business Research, and use you guys. You know, you guys were the production company, so I always had to interface with you guys. So, you know, I know those corporate arenas and those gigs well, and yeah, I got to imagine that. You know, whether it's an artist on the weekend or whatnot, you're picking up skills and you're picking up personality traits and learning a way to talk to people and to provide them what they need, while also letting them know perhaps the shortcomings of what they've paid for. Right?
Yeah.
They don't have
absolutely. No. I mean, one of my biggest mentors in monitors was Will Miller, and he, you know, before touring, he went to was at Georgetown, and you know, he had his double majored in English and psychology. And that psychology degree is something I think every monitor engineer should have, because that's what it is. I mean, you are mind reading, you're reading body language, you're figuring out how to connect on a completely different level, and it doesn't just go for monitors, of course, right? I mean, that's just good personal skills in communicating and managing people, and you know, the core word and all of that I've learned now is empathy, right? So I mean, that's I think the biggest, if I could sum up my biggest success and or the most important thing I would want people to learn is empathy.
Why has that made such an impact on
you? Because when you can relate to someone, when you can put yourself in someone's shoes, I mean, it's nothing worse than when somebody's trying to communicate to you or tell you something and they have no clue, they've never been there, they can't resonate, all those things, right? And so the second you can legitimately put yourself in their headspace, then it's golden. I mean, I typically, I've learned it through the years, so I study people, and I study people's interactions. So, like, I'll watch a conversation, I'll watch this person communicate to this person, and I'll try to decipher, okay, what were they actually trying to communicate? How well was it received? What was the response, right? And then, and take that and a conversation I am, and while I'm in the conversation, I'm having that conversation in my head and checking myself of, hey, how am I delivering this? How is it being received? And it eventually becomes second nature of studying people and studying interactions.
Right.
And it just allows you to be on a more, you know, human level, not being a robot when you're trying to communicate and deliver and, you know, work with people and not getting people to work for you, that type of thing.
So That's all awesome and fascinating. And I think the key part in there that we should definitely point out too is to empathize. You need to listen, right? Which is what you just described yourself doing, and more listening in this world, I think overall would be a good thing, for sure.
Two ears, one mouth, right?
2 years, 2 ears, one mouth. Exactly, man. I mean, I think, it's not too dissimilar like to the video work that I do, right? I get people who are very nervous to be on camera because I do a lot of documentary stuff and they're not used to it or whatever it is, or even an interview, right? I mean, from doing Signal to Noise that most of the folks we're choosing to interview on our shows have chosen to be on the side of behind the mic, behind the camera, right? For a reason,
right?
To be in the shadows.
Right.
So you get folks on the show and they get nervous. And so I think the more you can listen to them and provide that safe space for them to express themselves, then you can help them have a great show, have a great interview, have a great shoot, whatever it is. And so I think that listening and empathy goes hand in hand. Hey, what's happening, roadies? It's Larry here. Just wanted to thank you so much for listening to this short clip. I really hope you got something out of it. If you can take 2 seconds to head over to iTunes and drop us a review or a comment, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Keep listening, keep coming back, stay healthy out there, and remember, no roadies, no rock and roll.